the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics just 2 years away, important infrastructure and facilities are being built with two goals in mind: to ensure a successful spectacle and leave a legacy to further promote winter sports among the Chinese, particularly the middle class. In fact, as China bid for these Winter Olympic Games 4 years ago, it promised to encourage 300 million more Chinese to get involved in winter sports, which is no easy task. So how far is China from fulfilling its promise? What other industries are benefiting from the growing Chinese enthusiasm for winter sports? And how is China's ice and snow industry learning from industry leaders around the world? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the Beijing studio by Paul Dong, co-founder and CEO of EI Asia Limited, and Ye Chunguang, founder and CEO of Autotech. And via satellite by Lauren Van Nat, a Swiss ski business expert in Geneva. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Ray. Welcome to Dialogue, gentlemen. It seems with the expansion of the market for the middle class, the middle-income families, winter sports is getting very popular, and topics in whatever discussions will also be very topical. Why do you think we have this phenomenon?
Well, I think in terms of public management or planning for the country's future trend, I mean, it's up to the top leadership. I think they were very proactive years ago to figure out the right path for people to lead a different lifestyle from the past 40 years of very hardworking, very little leisure time. And it's not only the time spending, but also it creates the opportunities to generate new businesses and new industries. I think it's a strategic decision made by the Chinese leader. And if you look at the economic side, China's per capita GDP income has already exceeded $9,000 per year.
And President Xi Jinping put it at nearly $10,000 per capita.
Yeah, and if that will only allow even more people to consider going into this hobby or their lifestyle. And I mean, Chinese people have been practicing winter sports for quite a while, even without the Olympics. But the Chinese people have been so, if you like, obsessed about the Olympic Games. So by hosting the Olympics, China can get generous support from the international sporting community, but at the same time, the whole population will pay more attention, which will lay more solid foundation for them to try.
Oh, by the way, given the current complexity concerning dynamics of globalization, because we have such a big army of anti-globalization people around the world, sports could be a universal language that could appeal easily to the mind and heart of consumers of the middle-income families around the world. Having said this, I noticed that there are two kinds of opiums in the sports industry: white opium and green opium. White opium, of course, refers to the white snow. Yeah, ice and snow sports. Green, of course, golf playing. So what do you think of the huge and growing addiction with this kind of sports? What would be the prospect for this lion's share of the market?
Well, actually, I like the skiing so much, actually. It reminds me that maybe like 1 decade before we held Beijing 2008 Olympic Games. You see, that time we don't have a winter Olympic Games, but now we have winter Olympic Games. We have in 2022 in Zhangjiakou province. And this time we can see this white opium is just let people to know another bright future. Because before, like 10 years ago, we just only know the running things, the athlete things, but now we're turning another view to this white world. And now, people spend more money than before because we need gadgets. Some, snowboards, they're very expensive. And, the kids' parents, they want to spend more money on that. And as the time goes by, and people will get more public education about skiing and the winter sports. I think the industry in the future is going to be welcome a bright future, and maybe like 2 years later, maybe when we're holding the 2022 Winter Olympic Games, more people will join that. I think at that time, the people join this activity will get a lot welcomed by the normal audience. Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me cross over to Mr. Laurent Vanat, ski business expert from Switzerland. Hello, Laurent. I know some of my wealthy friends would often go skiing in Switzerland because of the charm of the Alps in the winter. What can you tell us about this question? Winter sports are a broad category which include a range of activities in the snow or on the ice. How are they commonly divided into subcategories?
You know, there is one big category that is the ski, and we know much better about the ski because people need to pay for 1 day skiing, and they have the ticketing, and at the gates at the ski resort we have the accounting of the people. And then there are all the other winter sports like Nordic skiing or ice skating, where you don't necessarily pay for something. It is much less organized. So there are a lot of people that can go there without any accounting of this. But I think in the perspective of the 300 million winter sports participants in China that has been given as a target, there are only 120 million that are focused on ski, and 180 million that are focused on other winter sports, as far as I know. So that means that the larger part is not focused on ski, but on either Nordic skiing, a lot on ice skating, and so on.
Do you believe, Laurent, excuse me, Laurent, do you believe the performance of Winter Olympics has a lot to do with the level of economic development? For example, in developed countries, you tend to have more medalists in the Winter Olympics, yet in underdeveloped countries such as China, it's still a very embarrassing area for us to catch up.
I think the timing of this Winter Olympic 2022 is very good because the ski business began to start in China in the early 2000s, and now it is growing. It is not yet mature, but it is at a good development stage, so that the Winter Olympic can really be very profitable for the industry. And I must say, over the recent Olympic, I have never seen a recent Olympic that had so much impact on the development of the ski industry than the Beijing 2022.
Thank you very much for giving us a rosy picture about the prospects of having more fans of Winter Olympics. Paul, a report released during the World Winter Sports Expo in October 2019 estimated that nearly 24 million skiing visits were registered in China during the 2018 and 2019 ski season. That was a 21.5% rise over the previous period. What do you make of this dramatic change?
What does that mean? 24 million. You know, the United States has probably the largest population of people practicing skiing sports. And as of 2018 or maybe early 2019, the figure was just 53 million. So that means China is quite getting closer and closer to the level of the U.S. And of course, Canada may have an even bigger population of skiing participants. But those, Canada and the U.S., are the biggest in the world. So that also means China's number of skiing resource visits already exceeded that of Russia.
Size matters.
Wow. Yeah.
Size does matter. But my next question for Chen Guang actually is, taking North America as an example, is it more about the market that facilitates the development of winter sports, or it's part of the popular culture that characterizes much of the fun for people in North America?
Well, I think there's a lot of people were joining, like in Canada and North America. A lot of capitalists, like VC venture capital, they invest a lot of resort in there. And comparing to China now, and you know, the VC, we're focused on the things too, especially in the southern of China. And let's think about this number. And we, like you said, Chinese have a crowd effect. You know, it's crowd effect. If you do something, I'm going to follow you. So I think in recent years, and people were more like outdoor skiing sports, and where we can learn something like Switzerland. We have a more facility standards and charging fee standards and services standard, which you learn from the overseas, like North America. I've been trying to skiing in Tahoe Lake before. That's a really example for me. Is they have a very great 360 degrees, the cable car, and they have a very long skiing track, and like 20 kilometers, really long. And I think if the things compared to China.
So market-oriented services and the quality as such do provide inspiration for local fans. The next question is very much about Paul. Do you think with the world becoming more and more flat, like Thomas Friedman said in his book, we feel the impact of a butterfly effect, right? The other side of the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean would always have a very strong spillovers in terms of cultivating people's awareness about the ice and snow fun and excitement. So the younger generation tend to be the biggest army of consumers in this particular area, because we are talking about incentives of the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think but China is a very unique and special case. If the Chinese, from the top of the government down to various levels on the grassroots, say we are ready to amass, millions of new participants, new fans of winter sports, that can be a double-edged sword. In a sense, a very strong message to the world. All right, there is a subtly emerging market out there, but at the same time, our resources enough to entertain the Chinese, because even to the rest of the world, winter sports can be quite popular in Germany, Switzerland, North America, or even the Czech Republic. But you can't say the population of professionals who can help develop the sports among the general public are enough to help China. But China, starting from scratch, how can you develop professionally without committing too serious mistakes, and it would be too late for you to turn around? I think it's indeed a very, very big challenge. That's why I said only the Winter Olympic Games can you legitimately generate all the resources to help you get them.
Perhaps we should let the bullets fly for a while. It's a little bit too early to say that we are rising fast from the level of just popularization of this winter sports to professional performance. It's a bit too early.
If you look at Chinese football, soccer, they have disrupted the European markets.
I hate this topic. I hate to discuss this subject matter.
I
know you're a big fan of
we should try our best to avoid
which is embarrassing me a lot. Okay, let me cross over to Lauren. Lauren, my next question is very much about the seasonal tourism. We know there are several pillar industries in your country that facilitates the development of Switzerland, which is one of the richest economies in the world. Do you believe winter sports, as part of the sightseeing industry, part of your tourism, contributes a lot to the boom of your economy for decades?
In Switzerland, I think tourists contributed a lot to the economy, but you would be surprised. In fact, the part of the tourism in GDP in Switzerland is not that big. Most of this tourism is at summertime or in city, so the winter tourism is only a fraction of this. And surprisingly, the mountain tourism started at summertime, and now it became very important at winter time, but it is gaining new importance now also at summertime. But I think China has also a lot of assets that can be used to develop the tourism, the mountain tourism, the winter tourism. So I don't think that Switzerland may completely outperform what could be done in China within a few years if the potential in China is used properly. One big thing in the winter tourism is that it is mostly depending on the domestic market. And in China, you have such a huge domestic market that you could be the world champion for winter tourism in a few years.
Yes, we have a lot to learn from Switzerland, a lot of inspirations to get from your beautiful country. However, there's one big luxury that China could hardly catch up with. That is the nice weather, even on top of the Alps. Very warm, very mild. Without the severity of the winter weather, for example, in Changbai Mountain in Jilin province in northeastern China, that big difference does create a sea difference for those who do love snow sports. You are watching Dialogue with Lauren, Chen Guang, and Paul. We are talking about what the 2022 Winter Olympics in Hebei province in China actually means for the fast rise of our passion for Winter Olympics. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let me go back to Lauren. Lauren, which country delivers the best performance in winter sports? Scandinavian countries, Russia, or North America? I mean, Canada and the United States. Which country comes across as the best player in this particular area?
I don't think there is one world champion. Every country has some good things and some bad things, and I think you really need to make some cherry picking of the good things in one place and the good things in other places. In some area there is not a beautiful landscape. In some other area there are beautiful landscape, but the facilities are not so good. And in some other places the accommodation is good, food is good, but maybe skiing is not that good. So you have plenty of different places, and I think there are a few resorts that are really top in the world, but it is difficult to say one country is really better than another one. And even in China you find state-of-the-art resorts. So even if the weather is so cold that you cannot be on a terrace and drink a coffee at the sun like you can do in the Alps, you can have great skiing and you can also have great food and great accommodation.
Thank you so much. For an amateur like me, food and beverage are more important than the sports facilities themselves. Thank you very much for being with us. Paul, what do you think of the difference that the location of the winter sports would create?
Well, I think that on the mind of our leaders, I think they're looking at the entire map of China. They hope that the industry can develop into every corner. In fact, the southern expansion and also the western expansion of winter sports have been going on for more than a decade. And you have pretty good skiing resorts in Hunan province, and even further south. And also in Shanghai, you have very good skating facilities.
Indoor facilities, I mean, you're talking about the
indoor facilities.
Right.
I think China.
That's a lot easier for
China makes up its mind to develop into sports in such a massive scale because it is confident in its own economic capability. And if you look at Europe, and if you look at the relatively less developed countries like the former Soviet Union countries, and you will see more facilities are outdoor because they cannot afford to build indoor facilities. But China can make it now. China is good at construction. Yes. And of course, the private companies now on their balance sheet have a pretty demanding and challenging liability for IP, because most of the technologies have its intellectual property owned by the Westerners, and that's a big issue. But I think in the long run, China can solve this problem, and so that. But in the short run, you don't expect your business to make money, to be profitable for such a short time. And just a few weeks ago, the State Council organized a TV meeting involving at least half a dozen ministry levels, because they realized that the strategy of encouraging sports development are hitting walls here and there in terms of environment, in terms of land management, and
different kinds of invisible ceilings.
Yes, because if you organize a big event, it involves so many other departments' cooperation with you, and that's a big issue.
Yes. Yeah. I wonder if President Donald Trump is in a better position to make such a coordination between different ministries. And that's a different topic. But Chen Guang, yes. What do you think of seasonal differences? Because we're talking about either Scandinavian countries, North America, Russia, or in China, southwestern cities and provinces could also make a very good location
Yes.
for winter sports. Why do you think this will deliver a sea difference?
I think, 1 year we have 4 seasons, right? Especially in the winter days, people want to go to the north. Southern people will stay at home, maybe just travel around in South area. But now, the VC comes into the markets. There's a great policy supporting here in China. A lot of venture capital. They invest a lot of indoor facilities like indoor skydiving, indoor skiing, indoor skating for kids' education, early education. So more facility we're building there. I think it's comparing to the north. Some people maybe come in the summer days. They come from the north to the south, because in the summer days the snow is melting, and a lot of people may go to Guangzhou. Maybe I think in the future maybe have indoor skiing. So in the future, the more and more facility we're building, structure we're building there, and more people will join in these activities. So.
What do you think of the appeal from the northernmost province of Heilongjiang in terms of winter sports? We know that investment would hardly go beyond the Shanghai Guan because of the poor relationship between government and the business community. In Chinese, 营商环境 is appallingly poor there. But what do you think of the exceptional prospects of having more of such income revenue for the local governments in the winter sports?
I think the northeastern provinces have their own advantages of training professional or very elite national skaters and skiers, because it has been so deep-rooted over so many decades that they have been doing this in the state system, and they are still good at it, and they still receive huge amount of investment or budget from the government. But to the south, I think it's more commercialized. I think it's if you build the bottom of the pyramid bigger and bigger, it's up to the central places and the southern places to develop them into businesses and to provide better and better services for people who just practice sports as a pastime instead of a real ambition to be a big star. I think the northeastern provinces are still the biggest basis to train national players.
So it's a behavior of the government in northeastern part of the country in order to prepare them for Winter Olympics. Is that the truth, Chen Guang? Well, it's largely very professional at the state level, but not for the sort of sports consumerism.
I think the northeast have a very great environments, and they can educate more trainers. But in the south, there are more people know about these industries. And
how much do you know about the relationship between the local government and the market in winter sports in northeastern China? We're talking about this not very beautiful area. It's a very embarrassing topic, right?
Yes. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, we accept that we have a very bright view and great view there. And the government, like you said.
You mean vision? Yeah. Beautiful vision.
Yeah.
However, realistically, it's difficult at this moment.
Yeah, realistically, it's very difficult. But now you can see we have a great view and very great site to attract people to go into the northeast. But now, the operation by the government is not that running so good. I mean, people know that, like Arctic Village is very hot, but other places in the north of the three provinces is not that good in operation. How to attract people. And
let's look at the other issue. What will be the best performances? In what areas China would give a very good level of professional performance in the upcoming Winter Olympics?
You mean the athletes representing
exactly,
the country?
Chinese athletes.
Well, China, apart from the several hundred million people participating some kind of winter sports and service the winter sports, at the same time, China has promised or trying its best to have at least one athlete in every single event as a host. That's a very, very demanding challenge. It's very difficult because in many sports, Olympic sports for 2022, some of them are still relatively unknown, even unheard of for professionals.
Yes.
You know.
But what do you think of what do you think of figure skating and the speed skating? It seems in these two areas traditionally we are not very bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to be a I like figure skating because it's kind of freestyle show. Yeah. So I think in the future, like now people like most of people like skiing. In the future, because some people were chasing another style to show his skiing skills. Figure skating, speed skating is also maybe in the future. It's a very potential, I mean, activity in the winter sports, and this is like a freestyle skating. It can impress more because he can show his body, show his movements, show his gestures to show himself.
Paul, do you think this sort of prominent feature that characterizes our good performance in northeastern part of China on the ice is actually the spillover of Russian influence? Because in the early years of the People's Republic, we switched completely to former Soviet Union, which did provide a lot of inspirations for the performance of our sports on the ice.
It's undeniable that almost all
nice classical music,
modern international
ballet
sports
on the ice, right.
that China learned from the former Soviet or Russians. Yes, indeed. But over the recent decades, I think China has been much more open, and Canadian coaches, your other Western European coaches come to China to train. And in some, you just mentioned short track speed skating. China can export Chinese expert to Europe now to train the Hungarian team.
This is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. But for kids, I believe ice hockey would be yet another popular event. With that, we come to the end of this discussion about the prospects of the 2022 Winter Olympics in China and what it means for the rise of a kind of a lifestyle for the middle-income families in the sizable market of China. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.